On today's episode, we'll discuss the difference between critiquing and criticizing, the importance of developing your network, 6 Feet Under, George Wallace, and of course, the bar from Lawrence of Arabia. Just a little bit of business before we start. There may be a curse word here or there in this episode, so please listen responsibly. As always, our website, theop.io, is up and chock full of tips, tricks, and gooey operator goodness. Make sure to check out The Breakdown, where the best operators in the biz explain shots they have done, The Musings, where we discuss everything from quick tips to larger concepts of storytelling, the answers, the images, and so much more. I may or I may not take a break or two during this episode, but I promise that none of them will be longer than 22 seconds. Finally, if you are enjoying the podcast, please follow us, write a review, share us with your parents, and talk us up around the water cooler with your friends. So grab a beverage, sit back, and enjoy the op. Thanks for listening.
Lock it up, nice and quiet, and let's roll.
Rolling. Victor 30 Echo, take 2.
Hey, Margaret. Hey, Mark.
And camera set. And action.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to a very special episode of the Op podcast. I'm Dave Comides. I'm your host, and this is the podcast where we talk about operating and the art of visual storytelling. I'm really excited today for a number of reasons. I am in Savannah, Georgia at SCAD, the Savannah College of Art and Design, where I've been here now for, 24 hours teaching, and I'm teaching today and tonight and tomorrow, and it's just fantastic because amazing students here, and it sort of invigorates me and makes me excited about what I'm doing. The person who brought me here is the person I'm going to be speaking to today. I'm very, very excited to have on the show cinematographer, previously an operator, Alan Caso. Some of Alan's credits, but not all of them by any means. He was a cinematographer on Paradise Lost, The Rookie, American Gothic, the pilot for the show The Americans, also Reindeer Games, and not one but 2 Muppet movies, including Muppets in Space, which a lot of people think is the best of the Muppet movies, but we could talk about that. As a camera operator, he operated on CB4, which nobody saw, but I thought was hysterical and fantastic, so I thought I would say that. Tour of Duty, Dominic and Eugene, an underrated movie, Serpent and the Rainbow, Stepfather 3, because there were still questions left over after Stepfather 2, and a movie that is one of my personal favorites that hopefully you're going to talk about, and I'll get you to talk about.
Okay.
Finally, he was nominated for 4 Primetime Emmys for Into the West, which is a Steven Spielberg produced show, 6 Feet Under twice, and the miniseries George Wallace. In 1998, he won the ASC award for 6 Feet Under, and he was nominated in 2005 for Frankenstein, in 2006 for
Actually, the
Into the
ASC
West.
award was one for George Wallace.
And this is where I get screwed up because I did
that's why I'm
one
here.
for George Wallace.
That's what I'm here for.
He's done a tremendous amount. I haven't even begun to scratch the surface, and I'm excited to speak with him. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Alan Caso. This is cool.
I'd pay a lot of money to get that.
What are you? They're like. I mean, if you go all the way back, what are there? 2,000, 3,000 people here? It's like the
Yeah,
entire.
right. It's like
Savannah.
the whole Savannah's shown up.
Thank you for having me.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, and thanks for having me to SCAD. This is cool. So you're a professor here, right?
I am. I started in 2021. Never taught a minute of my life.
Really?
So, yeah. So this was like a whole
You're a newbie.
newbie completely, and still.
So tell me your story. How'd you get here?
How did I get to SCAD, or how did I get into the industry?
Everything. Start at the beginning. I was born in.
Right, okay. Well, I was born in Marblehead, Massachusetts.
Oh yeah.
Which actually, I'm a Marbleheader.
How long did it take to lose the accent?
Never really. I mean, it comes out every so often.
Have a couple
especially-
drinks and it
Yeah,
comes out.
yeah. But certainly, it's something that sticks with you
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah.
You never get the New England out of the guy. So,
Yeah.
and grew up in a small town. Went to UMass, and then decided that I took, after taking a film course at Mass College of Art, which is where I first started.
Okay.
To really, at that time, it was really just to avoid the draft. Okay, because we're talking about the 70s, right in the middle of Vietnam.
I think we actually owe a tremendous amount of filmmaking's history to people avoiding the draft.
Absolutely.
So
And-
something good came out of it.
Yeah, so it was really interesting because I thought I had avoided the draft, but really I was going to be headed there anyway because my number was 228. At this point in the draft, they were now giving you lottery numbers.
For people who are listening who may not understand, this was for the Vietnam War, and the
Vietnam.
draft meant when your number came up, you went.
Yeah, you were brought into, usually it was the Army, In fact, I think it was only Army that drafted you because the Navy
I think that's right.
was volunteer, the Marines were
Yeah.
certainly volunteer.
And the Army meant you were like
A ground
you were
pounder.
a
Yeah.
ground pounder.
Yeah, you were a ground
That's
pounder.
a
You're
lovely term.
and most likely going to Vietnam
Yeah.
or in country.
Good times.
So my number was 220. I figured, oh, this is great. I'm never gonna, I'm never gonna get drafted. So when I got up to 225,
Yeah.
and they were picking them in groups of 5, I said, okay, I'm gonna be going in, right?
I'm the next round.
Right. So at this point, I had almost dropped out of Mass College of Art because there's really nothing in there that was really interesting me.
Okay.
I mean, I started as a graphic arts major, painting major. Nothing was really taking hold. I mean, I was an okay artist, but not that great. And I took a film course. And oh my God, my life completely changed
Really?
overnight.
Do you remember
I was
something?
even doing well in math and science because when something like that profound changes you, it affects everything in your life.
Do you remember a movie that you saw on the film course that made you go, "Oh my God"? Like, was there one a particular thing or a couple?
No, what really was is the first exercise I ever had was an editing exercise.
Okay.
And by the way, if you're promising or aspiring cinematographer, the first class you should ever take is an editing class.
100%.
Nothing, don't even look at a camera till you take an editing.
Actually, after you take psychology.
Yeah,
You should
probably.
take
Yeah, because you have to deal with a
Yeah, you
lot.
could deal
Yeah,
with
right.
that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we'll get into that.
Yeah, that's a whole nother.
So I took this course, and the first exercise we had was we learned how to cut and splice film. So you cut it, you put the glue on, you cement it, and you learned how to connect shots, different angles, whatever it was, whatever the shots were in the scene, you learn how to connect it. So the professor hands us all a roll of film. It's all exposed. It has a scene on it, and it has a scene from On the Waterfront.
Oh,
It's the scene with Lee J. Cobb and Marlon Brando in the back of the car, where I could have been a contender, and whatever he says, I don't remember. And the thing is, there's no sound, and all the shots are completely mixed up. And the assignment was to go home and recut it all together in what you thought was the order.
oh, that's so cool. I think it's also very worth pointing out right now that you couldn't go home and go, let me go on YouTube and watch On the Waterfront and see how they.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
not like you could just watch
No,
it.
you couldn't do
Like
it.
maybe you saw it once. Or something.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, that's
So,
cool.
and I did really well. I think I got only one shot out of sequence, and it was a reaction shot. It was a reaction from
Yeah.
the crowds. So I did really well. But more importantly is working with shooting cameras and all that, and just for me being a very visual person, it was like putting all the best parts together.
That's so cool.
And so it really made sense to me. Like I said, I was doing great in everything now. I mean, all my studies, it was totally turned on to academic, totally turned on to learning and all that. And I decided, all right, I'm going to get out of here because they have a better film program at UMass. So I went there, and just as I got there, the draft thing was happening. So I want to go back. A long story short,
Yeah.
get
no,
back to
it's all
that.
good.
So I figured, okay, I'm going to be up next because they're going to be calling the numbers at the end of the week. I don't actually remember what day it was. So I figured, all right, I'm going to nip this in the bud. I'm not going to move to Canada. I'm not going to do that deal. So I decided, you know what? I'll join the Navy because it seemed like, all right, that's not a bad option. Okay?
Basically, because you could sort of choose what you were going to do rather than them.
Yeah, and
saying,
it was
"This
much
is
more
the-"
technically oriented, but also I'm not going to be a ground pounder.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, so I go down to Northampton where they had a enlistment office, and I went to the Navy office, and I told him, what I was doing and all that. He goes, you know what, we're just not taking anybody right now. We don't need anybody. So I don't know what to tell you.
hmm
He said, I'll take your number, but I don't think your options are very good, right? So I go, oh God, so now what I'm going to do? So, but that next day, I get a call back from him, and he says, hey, you know what? I think I may have something here. A good friend of mine, he's in the Signal Corps, or whatever it was, the part that does communications. And, you said you were doing film and stuff. We could really fit you in on something like that. I could get you all connected up, set you up. And and I said, God, that's great. All right. So I go and get my hair cut, like really short. I tell my parents, they were all freaked out, but it's like the whole thing. I'm, working it out with my roommates to get the rents paid for
Yeah,
the rest
yeah.
of our lease. And that next morning, I'm going down to the enlistment office to sign up, right? As I'm going out the apartment, I run into my roommate who's been up all night partying. And he goes, "Oh, hey, you must be happy and glad." I said, "What? What do you mean?" And he goes, "Well, you know." And I said, "No, I don't know." And I was ready to punch him. I said, "Well, you know, you say you must be glad you're going to go and enlist in the Navy."
Yeah.
He goes, "No, didn't you see the news broadcast last night?" And I said, "No." He said, "Well, Nixon, you know what he said? The draft, they've stopped the draft."
Oh my God.
And to this day, I'm thinking, okay, what if I didn't run into my roommate and I went
Oh
down
my God.
and enlisted in the Navy?
Or what if you ran into him on the way back? You're like,
It would even been worse, right? Anyway, so
There's no take backs on that. I don't.
there's no
Yeah.
take backs.
Oh, that's amazing. Wow.
Yeah. So a side story to that was when I was talking to this guy, he was telling me about he and his wife were kind of struggling because I asked him like, you know, what are you doing now? He said, yeah, this, you know, kind of sort of like on half pay, and so we're really struggling, and you know, our washer broke down, and we don't know what we're gonna do. So I felt after I ran into my roommate, I had like $350 in my account. I went down and bought the guy a new washer. That's good karma,
That's great.
you know.
I think that's what
And he
saving
was
your
so
life.
touched. That
Yeah.
guy was so
Yeah.
touched.
Oh, that's wonderful. I like that.
So anyway, from there I went to California
Yeah.
because there's two choices when you're on the East Coast. There's two choices actually where you were going to do film.
This is early 70s.
This is 70,
It was the end of the draft.
73,
74.
74,
Okay.
right.
All right.
So if you were into narrative filmmaking, you go to Los Angeles. That's where all movies were being made.
Oh.
If you were into commercials or documentaries and stuff, it was more like New York.
Oh, really? It was
Really,
like
I mean, there was a
that
small
split.
feature group, but they were so tight knit and incestuous. I mean,
Everything was like really insular
in New York,
then.
especially in New York.
Yeah,
If
yeah.
you weren't, you know, the family of.
Uh-huh.
But in LA, it wasn't that much different because it was a very, very exclusive industry. And what I mean by exclusive is as opposed to inclusive, okay? Not exclusive like, oh, wow, that's really great. No,
Yeah.
exclusive. If you weren't the son of or the friend of a son of, and you weren't white and male,
A male.
I mean,
You didn't get in.
you didn't get in.
And you're talking about basically the unions
The
mostly,
unions, right? And also just the whole,
Yeah.
and it really was they really didn't want anybody outside coming in. It was very protective. They wanted to protect their jobs.
It was a good gig and they wanted to keep it in
Yeah.
the family.
And it was a good
yeah,
gig,
yeah,
you know.
Yeah.
So getting in was very difficult. So everybody has sort of like their stories of how they got in, you
Yeah.
know. And well, anyway, so that's how I got to California.
Ballet. And so did you just like get in and
The first
start
thing that
working?
really no, I didn't. No, I spent a couple of years where it was, you know, fringe and being around the outside looking in.
Yep.
But I will say what I did do when I got there is somebody gave me a tip that you'd say go to AFI because they're always looking for crews on their shows.
So was it a graduate film school then or
It was still I was always
just
a
graduate?
It was
Okay,
always
so it was
a
a
fellowship.
famous graduate film school.
But this is when AFI was in a Blackstone, I think Blackstone Castle was in Beverly Hills.
Oh, okay.
That's not where it is today.
Yeah.
And so I'll never forget walking into AFI, right? And I walk through these big gates, and there's this huge mansion with, you know, beautifully manicured grounds and a big circular driveway, and you could just see the top half of the castle above the
Like
trees,
driving
right?
into Citizen Kane or
Right,
something like that.
exactly.
Yeah,
It was like Xanadu,
yeah,
right?
Yeah. Sanity.
And there, right in the middle of the circle, was this dolly and this Panaflex camera, the old PSR.
Ah, yeah.
Big old monster,
Massive.
like the classic movie cameras you see in all the, you know, everything that's
Yeah.
about Los Angeles, you know.
It's like the dream, right?
It's
like,
the dream.
yeah.
And there was sitting there. Nobody was around. It was just sitting there on a dolly. And I'm looking around. So I go walking up and I'm still looking around.
Have you ever seen one of these before?
No.
Okay. Yeah, yeah.
No. I've only seen it in
a picture or
pictures.
something, yeah,
Pictures,
yeah.
you know, the iconic
Yeah,
camera,
sure.
right?
Oh, great.
With the matte box and, you know,
Yeah.
and it's on a dolly and it's like, oh my God.
a
So
movie.
I step up and look around again. So I stick my eye in the eyepiece and oh my God, that first initial look completely swept me away because when
Really?
you look inside a 35 millimeter motion picture camera, it's like it's so big and so massive when your eye goes in there, it's like you've walked into a movie theater.
That's cool.
And all those years that I worked as a camera operator, shooting 35 millimeter film with 35 millimeter cameras, I never forgot that moment. And so every time I would put a camera to my eye or I'd put my eye to a camera, it's like I entered that world.
Oh, that's really cool. That's
And I
fantastic.
always, and that's the way I used to operate, is I used to watch the movie. I
Yeah.
never thought about what I was doing with my body. Never thought about all that technical stuff that you thought ahead of time when you'd work that stuff out.
Yep.
But once you worked it out, you forget it all
Yeah.
and you step up and you just operate the shot, or you actually watch the shot operate itself.
Oh, I love that. That's beautiful. Don Devine, who's a great camera operator, I don't know if you know him, but he and I talk
course
all
I
the
know
time.
him, yeah.
And he has this thing where he says, sets are chaos, right? They're chaos. Sometimes they're organized chaos, but
They
usually
are.
they're not. And everybody's screaming things and this and that and the other. But then, like as you get clear, the actors come in and makeup comes in and they mark it, and then everything goes really quiet. And then you get your eye up to the eyepiece, and it's like it's my time.
Oh.
And granted, it's the actor's time and the assistant's time. I'm not just saying it's me, but it's like this, like.
But it's so
And
wonderful.
as he says, which I shouldn't say on the podcast, and we've already said on the podcast with him, he goes, "That's the part I'd do for free, but don't tell anybody."
Yeah, right, exactly.
But that's so great. And then did like alarms go off and they dragged you off the campus?
No, then I was kind of looking around for, so I went up there and who do I see but Vilmos Sigmund?
No,
who
you
I
kidding
didn't
me?
really kind of know,
Oh.
but he's up there and he's helping.
Was he faculty or something?
No, he had volunteered to help a very close friend of his who came over as a fellow who was directing his
Wow.
fellow movie, and Vilmos was shooting for him.
This is
So I get hired on as like the fourth grip to
Oh,
work.
on some student film,
Yeah,
like
some
thesis
film,
film or
but
something.
I'm watching Vilmos every day,
We're at a-
doing stuff, right? So I got tremendous experience on that, and then I became very close friends with a fellow guy named Steve Posey, who will
Okay.
come into the story later.
I think I know where
when-
Steve Posey comes in.
Yeah.
Okay.
Steve Posey comes in later,
Yeah.
and it's interesting
He was
because
a student there?
he was a fellow,
Okay. Yeah.
and he was in his second year there.
All right.
And was he in his second year? He may have been his first year because I knew him for a couple
And
of
there are
years.
different tracks. There's like directing and cinematography, right?
Directing,
So he was
cinematography,
the cinematographer?
producing.
What-
Yeah, he
what-
was cinematographer.
cinematographer.
Yeah, he had come from Emerson,
Okay.
so that's kind of where we hit it off because he was also from the Boston
So
area.
he's in the cinematography class, and Vilma Shigman is hanging out, showing them how to do stuff. That's
Yeah,
just like,
it was
I can't
crazy.
even-
So anyways, but I get to go off and work on this thing, and then later I get to meet Steve and Jacques Haitkin. I don't know if you
Jacques
know
Haitkin, sure.
Jacques. I worked as a boom guy on his
Yeah,
fine
Jacques
film.
Haitkin was an old time Steadicam.
old time.
Yeah,
Oh yeah,
one of the first group.
yeah.
Did
And
he
then
used
he
to wear?
kinda-
Did he used to wear a patch? Was he the guy who wore a
I'll
patch
tell you.
over his eye?
Well, let me tell you something about the patch thing. Okay,
Okay.
talking about that. Again, we go back to the eyepiece thing. You stick your
Yeah.
eyepiece and suddenly you're in peace.
Yeah.
But sometimes putting your right eye to the eyepiece, your left eye, and we do this a lot.
Yeah.
You keep the left eye open and kind of see what was going
Or you
around.
open and close it, or
Yeah, but I always got to the point where I could actually concentrate my right eye in the frame and see that. But there was times when I didn't want to see all that and have that, so I'd use my left eye.
yeah, and
And then your
bury-
right eye's buried in
right
the-
eye between the camera and the lens. So
But yeah, so we'll get back to Jacques
okay.
Haitkin and his patch later.
This is a
So
6-hour podcast, but I'm fine with it.
sorry.
No, it's great.
I know where I'm going with this. Yeah, and I told you I was tired.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
But anyway, so yeah, so I got to be good friends with this guy, Steve Posey. But here's the thing about doing that, and it was the best thing I ever did, is that working on all these shows for free at AFI, that was where I started my network. That's where I started to develop my network.
And that's what it's all
and
about.
like what you guys do here at SCAD is the friends that you make and the group that you hang out with going up through the 4 years that are here. That's your network. That's your start of your network. Everybody's going to go their separate ways, but you're all going to stay in touch. And some of you are going to hit it big early. You're going to help your friends who are part of your network, who are going to lift them up. So that's how it all works. And the same thing, whether it's SCAD or whether it's just on the street,
Sure.
hard
No, it's
knock
all-
school, or
all
whatever it
that
is.
stuff. Yeah.
But anyways, so that's kind of how I got started.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's
Yeah.
fantastic. So you started as a grip on that, and you sort of learned as you went, and whatever. And then
Yeah.
what did you become a camera assistant at some point, or what was your?
Yeah,
what
a
was your
camera
direct-
assistant is kind of a
Okay.
interesting story.
Yeah, what's right-
But no, so I got a job at this little rental house. They had like an insert stage, and they'd have commercials going there. And so I went in there, and the guy's his equipment room and where he kept all his was really a mess. And I told him, hey, if you just pay me like minimum wage, I'll put the whole place together.
Bam,
And
you're in.
yeah, a guy named Bob Maxwell.
Okay.
And actually, the reason why I wanted to work for him is because Debbie Maxwell, his daughter, was really, really cute.
9 times out of
Yeah,
10, it leads
and
up to that
I kind
somewhere.
of want to do that. But she went and got married. But
All right.
anyway, so I worked for Bob, and he would crew out. He'd crew out and get crews who, they rent his stuff and for these little movies.
Mhm.
And so one of the early movies that I got to work on, as this was actually my first camera assistant job
Okay.
per se, but I was also a grip.
Yeah, it was one of
So I was
those.
a grip
Yeah,
and,
yeah,
and,
yeah,
and
yeah.
the second assistant, loader really.
Yeah.
Was a 3D kung fu picture called The Fists of Don Juan Do.
Oh my gosh.
Okay. And the Fist of Don Juan Do, it was actually a Chinese movie, but they needed a number of U.S.
Yeah,
sequences.
local crew
So
to-
they'd
yeah.
come over.
Or
So that's
local
that's what
yeah.
we were doing. And Bob Maxwell's son-in-law, who married Debbie, she
Not that you're bitter.
yeah, right. So he was the DP, and he'd been shooting a lot for Bob. So obviously he's going to pick.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So being the loader, they wanted me to go meet and talk and learn the 3D system that this guy who developed it.
Oh wow.
So you know who it was that developed it?
No.
An old Oscar-winning cinematographer named Winton Hoke,
Okay.
who helped develop
The
Technicolor.
process. Oh wow. Oh wow. Wow. So this is
So
like one of the
he was known as Winnie Hoke.
The
So if you
big
look up
names.
Winton Hoke,
Yeah.
it was like a major deal in the
That's wild.
40s and 50s, right? So he's really well known to the older community, and
and he also came up with the way to do 3D. Is that the idea?
so he, in his spare time, he develops this 3D system, which is a binocular system,
Yeah.
left and right eye,
Okay.
but it was all worked in so that the parallaxing was worked in with the focus.
So it,
All on one knob.
It would
So
all
as you,
work together.
as you focused on this,
Yeah.
the parallaxing would also, it was like insane.
wow.
And the way that a 3D system works when you have binocular lenses is that the optics put it so that the right eye is on the top and the left eye is on the bottom, and it shares the same 35 millimeter full frame. And then it would separate it later when they project it.
That's cool.
So I got to learn the system. So what I do is I learn the system. I drive the grip truck up to San Francisco, and I'm loading the film and making sure that everybody uses the 3D system right.
Yeah.
And then in the meantime, I'm either doing grip work with C-stands, or I built a ramp for a car stunt.
I love the value. It's like, hey, when you're done building the ramp and you move the truck, can you come over and show us how the 3D system works?
That's basically what I was
that's how
doing
things
every day.
happened
Every day.
back then. That's
So that was
fantastic.
kind of my first job.
That's great.
A job period, working as a grip, and then I worked on Drive-In Massacre as an electrician, and then I started
But
working.
that was the name of a movie,
Yeah.
Drive-In Massacre.
Drive-In Massacre, and I started working on a lot of movies as a full-on electrician, because I kind of liked the lighting thing
Yeah.
a lot.
Yeah.
And for Nick von Sternberg, who was Joseph von Sternberg's son,
Yeah.
and Nick went to UCLA.
Okay.
He was a graduate, and he's kicked out right away. I mean, he was doing all these
Yeah.
low budget features, medium budget features. He was getting, he was the big indie guy
Yeah, yeah.
for a while, and I got to be really good friends with him, and I eventually started gaffing for him. So here I am on this double track. I'm gaffing, and then I go also the camera
Yeah,
track.
yeah.
which
And you're trying to figure out which. One question for you: when you were gaffing and when you were doing an electrician, were they using like carbon arcs back then?
Yes.
Still? Can you
Yeah.
tell people what that was?
So a carbon arc is a big old light, it's sort of like an 18K, and there's two arc carbons. One's a negative, one's a positive. The negative burns twice as slow as the positive. And so the positive is sort of like this, the negative is like this. And what happens is when you strike an arc, first of all, you put electricity into the system, and when you touch them, a spark, and it forms an arc, and then they separate again at a certain distance, and that arc becomes a very bright light. And it's daylight balanced. It's probably the most gorgeous light you can make out of a movie light.
But there was literally like a chimney at the top.
And there's a little chimney
to go,
because all that
right?
smoke had to go someplace. And I got really good. I could change the positive like within 12 seconds.
Because it would burn out.
It would burn out.
Or
Well,
burn
they
down or
they
whatever.
both
Yeah.
burn down.
Yeah.
And what happens is that you have to trim the arc a little bit to change the speed so that the speed of the burn
Yeah.
is
So if you were on a light, you'd have to keep an eye on it all day because
all day
you'd have
long.
to because it could go
Yeah.
out in the middle of a scene or something.
Yeah.
It's like a total
So I remember some of these
wild.
movies, we'd have three arcs, and
Yeah.
I'd be on an arc.
Amazing.
So it's really great.
Yeah.
And it was really great because if you were an arc operator, you had like the best job because they had these grids that converted the whatever they did. I don't know what the electrical thing is, but they would convert whatever they convert, and they were really hot. So if you were shooting during the winter and it's really cold and you're up on your ladder and you put that grid right underneath you,
There
you
you
stayed
go.
nice and
Yeah,
warm.
see,
So it's really the
it's
best.
survival.
Yeah.
But then at some point you obviously veered more into camera, right?
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did. I wanted to get into camera, but just tried to get the
Yeah,
opportunities.
yeah.
So it helped a little bit that I did that 3D Kung Fu figures because Bob Maxwell gave me, little jobs, little commercial things that they were doing where they needed a loader or a second assistant.
yeah.
I even got to work as a first on some of the stuff, but not too much.
All right.
I still wanted to know how to be a first assistant.
So without saying what it is, I'm chomping at the bit to hear about a specific movie that you worked on early in your career, which I
So
think
this
you
is
know
the
what I
one-
want to know
this is
about.
this is the one that really got me started.
I love this.
Because it really did. I mean, it made all the things happen for me. It got me in the union, learned how to do Steadicam. I mean,
Yeah.
the list is long.
Yeah.
So, so I get the, I'm looking and trying to get anybody to help me get a job doing camera. And so I get this call from the sound guy who would come on over once in a while. I don't know how we were friends with him. I guess we got to be good friends.
Let me just ask you one question because it makes me think of it. How did people get your phone number back then? You just gave your phone number out to people? Because it's not like you didn't even have pagers yet.
No,
I
no,
mean,
no.
it wasn't
People,
cell
they
phones.
wrote the phone numbers
write it
down
on a
in
piece of
your,
paper
in your
and you
phone
gave it
book.
out to people in your phone book.
Yeah, and you write your numbers down.
And then someone said, "Hey, I need an assistant." I'm like, well, this guy's number, and
yeah,
give it to.
oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Wow.
And you
Okay.
give people phone. I mean, yeah, there was no
Yeah.
digital
Just you
universe at
think
all.
it's sometimes you have to like kick yourself back and go, yeah,
Yeah.
how did that work? Anyway,
There's
so I
not,
interrupted.
there's not even any PD. What do you call it? Personal something?
A digital assistant or something
Yeah,
like that, or whatever. No,
before
it was
before the-
paper. That was
yeah,
the
it was
digital
paper.
assistant.
That
Yeah.
was the deal.
So
So he says, "Hey, you know what? I'm up on this crazy film up in Soledad Canyon, and we all kind of knew where that was. It was up about 45 minutes north of Los
it's
Angeles,
kind of the middle of nowhere, right?
middle of nowhere,
So,
in a canyon,
yeah.
the middle of
Yeah.
the mountains and stuff, right? And on the way to the desert, actually." And he said, and they're talking about starting a B camera. And I think the first assistant on the show because he said when he had mentioned that they were going to start running a B camera and asked if we knew anybody. And here's the catcher about this whole thing, is that they were looking for people who would work for almost no money, and didn't realize, but under dangerous conditions. And so there weren't really a lot of options out there. People who kind of could do the job, be willing to do the job, and fit all those bills. So I said, yeah, I'd definitely be interested, right? So he goes, okay, let me. And he said, and I think the first assistant, his name's Steve Posey. I said, oh yeah, Steve Posey from AFI,
From AFI, yeah,
fantastic.
great.
One of my network people that I've made a contact with. I said, yeah, I'd really be interested. So he says, I'll tell Posey and I'll give you a call if it could work out. So he said,
So were they calling you to be the first assistant on B camera?
no,
Is that-
they're calling me to be the second assistant on B camera.
on B camera. Okay, all right.
No,
gotcha.
no, I didn't have any experience.
I
first.
gotcha. Okay.
And they knew that,
Yeah.
which is fine. B camera
Sure.
second assistant,
On
I'm
a
there.
movie? This
Are
is
you kidding me?
great.
Movie?
Yeah.
I'm so there.
How could it go wrong?
Yeah, how could it go wrong? Yeah. And so I said, yeah. So Posey calls me and says, yeah, come on up here. Well, listen, we're gonna start B camera on Friday. I think this was actually the week before. He said the following Friday. So what I want you to do is, I'll call them and let them know. I want you to go down to Panavision and start learning the Panaflex system.
Yeah.
I said, are you serious?
Sounds
You
like
guys
real-
are using
real camera.
Panaflex system? Are you
Yeah.
kidding me? And I'm thinking that big Panavision camera that I saw,
Yeah.
I had no idea that they were actually using Panaflex.
Yeah, which is a smaller one, the newer.
Which is like the hot deal. They had only been out for 4 years.
Yeah.
So they were like the hottest, greatest thing. They were like what's the latest, Alexa. And
But there was a point at the beginning where they wouldn't even let you touch them unless you'd been like teched out on them. So was it still that's why you had to go down?
Absolutely.
Like, Panavision wouldn't let you touch
would
the
not
cameras
let you
unless
touch it at
do.
all.
Yeah.
You have to go to the school.
Yep. Yep.
So I went down there, met Phil, met all those guys who had been there.
Yeah.
We know them to be forever, right? And so, who also ended up being great friends, long friends. So I get down there and I get checked out on the Panaflex, and I didn't realize till I get to Panavision there was actually the Panaflex. There's this little camera. They taught me how to load it if it was in my lap. They taught me how to
that's
all the
amazing.
different things.
And
So
it was a game changer. I mean,
it was a complete game changer because this was a complete.
It was portable.
It was
essentially.
portable,
Yeah.
but it was also a complete system.
Yeah.
So the iris rods worked, the follow focus, and it was all matched, and just it was brilliant. And so I'm ready to go. So I called Posey, all exciting, and he was kind of laughing because he knew that I'd get excited. I said, "Okay, good. So show up next Friday. I'll get ready to go." Okay. So next Friday, I get up. I'm supposed to show up at 12 noon. But I'm all excited and stuff. So I get up. I figure I'll just get there early because.
And you haven't seen a script or anything, like you
Oh no!
you just
Oh
know
no!
what
I
the
don't
book
even know what the name of the
You don't
movie
even know
is.
the name of the movie.
And for some reason he wasn't. I'd asked him a couple of things, but he wouldn't really tell me
Yeah.
what it was about or anything. And all right,
This is great.
yeah. So I'm driving up. I'm so excited. I follow the directions, and I come over this hill, and then there's this huge complex. It's sort of like this. It kind of looked like if you were approaching Disney's Jungle Cruise from a slight rise, driving down into the Jungle Cruise, right? So there's this huge area that's just all lush green stuff, and then there's this massive parking lot with all these cars, dirt parking lot, and there's this big barn. And I thought, how odd, right? And as I'm driving down in, the barn door opens as I'm driving down in, and this guy is taking this elephant and moving the elephant out of the barn. I go, what the heck? And there's an ambulance with the lights flashing at the gate, and the gate itself looks like a Jurassic Park gate. It's got the big thing above it with the kind of the bamboo stuff. And I mean, it just looked really bizarre. I'm saying, what the heck's going on here? And so I get down and I'm seeing all these people walking out. Everybody's leaving. I'm saying, where's everybody? So as I'm walking in, I see Posey standing there.
Yeah.
And he sees me. Come here. And as he's doing that, they're carrying somebody out on a stretcher with the lights flashing, right? And he's yelling out at, saying stuff. And I wasn't sure what he was saying, but he had a thick accent,
I know
All right.
exactly what this is.
And he said, you gotta keep shooting, all right? And he's, God damn it, we're gonna fucking shoot. So he's being carried on to the thing. And I said, Steve, what's going on? And as I'm walking up to him, I hear this, oh, 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 oh. And I hear like echoes of this thing, right? I said, what is that? Sounds like a lion. And Pose, listen, we had a little problem here. And I said, who's that they were carrying out? And he said, well, that was the cinematographer. He had a little accident. And, so I'm going to be shooting for a while. I said, oh, that's great. Fantastic. And he goes, yeah, well, the problem is that the whole camera crew quit. And so it's really kind of like you and I, and I'm working on getting a second assistant. I said, well, what would I be doing? Aren't I the second assistant? No, I think I'm going to have you be the first assistant. Would you want to be the first assistant? Is this he's saying that I'm hearing all these lions now start chorusing? It's like a big fucking chorus, right? And I said, all right, what's going on?
Yeah.
He goes, all right, what happens? That's Jan de Bont. He
Shut
had
up
a
on the day Jan de Bont.
yeah, he had a mishap. There was this female line. Yeah, she was running through, and he was under this tarp. It was like a camouflage tarp, and he didn't put his helmet on because he just didn't do stuff like that, and he just wanted to get the shot done, and he's bobbing his head underneath the tarp, and you know how cats are with putting your hand under a blanket.
Because you know how cats are.
Yeah. And she just took a bite out of his head, and he had a big cut across his head. We need 125 stitches. His scalp was flopped down in front of his face, and they had to deal with that. So off he goes, and And then,
And just out of curiosity, are you thinking that this might be a bad idea at any point here? Are you
I'm
thinking I'm going
thinking
to be a first AC?
this is I'm already weighing all the odds and stuff. How long is it going to be till I get
Yeah.
bid? And, and what am I having to
I
really
can't
do?
believe you showed up on the day that Jan de Bont got
Yeah, it was
scalped.
crazy.
That's unbelievable.
Well, it was,
So, and the movie was,
and the movie was Roar. So I don't know if you know the movie Roar.
which you've ever know, if you've never don't know about the movie Roar, it's considered to be the most dangerous movie ever made.
It is without a doubt.
I'm sort of obsessed with this movie. It took how many years to actually finish?
4 years.
4 years. Tippi Hedren starred in it.
Melanie
Melanie
Griffith, her
was in
daughter.
it. Her daughter was
Then
in it.
Noel Marshall, who was married to Tippi Hedren, who the two of them, just as a little history, the two of them, Tippi had done a movie in Africa, and Noel went with her. Noel, by the way, is a very successful producer. He
It
was
was
the
out of
executive
Africa
producer.
was the movie, wasn't it?
I don't know what they
No,
what he
Out
did.
of Africa was later. I'm sorry. Yeah.
But I know that he was the executive producer on The Exorcist and
Okay.
a few other big
Yes.
hits at Warner Brothers.
And as a matter of fact, Roar happened because of the money from The Exorcist.
Yes,
Yeah.
pretty
Anyway,
much so.
yeah.
Right. Yeah, so they fell in love with big cats, and they in Los Angeles they had this house up off of Coldwater Canyon, and they started raising like a couple of lion cubs.
Which, by the way, up in Coldwater Canyon is not out in the boonies. It's in Los
Yeah,
Angeles.
it's right in the center of Los Angeles.
And
It's-
you would go to their house and they'd have like lions walking around and sleeping in the bed in the
So
backyard.
so the lions got too big, and the house was too small, so they bought this ranch, this preserve is what it was, and they thought that they'd save cats that were in jeopardy.
So they weren't thinking of making a movie originally.
Well, I think Noel was
Yeah,
the whole
probably,
time.
yeah,
He was
okay,
thinking
yeah.
about it the whole time.
Yeah.
He's thinking, hey, this is a
Actually,
great.
no, from reading her biography, when they were in Africa, he said, I had
He's
an
even-
idea for a movie, and they were going to do it there, and then they said, let's do it. And I don't know at
Maybe
what
that's
point.
what it
They want, at some point, someone should have said, I think this is a bad idea.
I'm taking the more benevolent
Yeah,
story.
I
I'm
guess.
taking
I'm with you.
Tippi's story.
Sure, you should.
It's
Yeah,
Tippi,
absolutely.
Tippi, her heart was in the right place.
Absolutely.
He just wanted to save the cat.
And for the record, by the way, she still actually has a preserve called Shambhala in Los Angeles,
or
where
Shambhala.
she saves Shambhala, where she saves big cats, and you can go visit and whatever.
You know,
But
so like if a zoo closes up, or
Yeah.
they find that, and this happens a lot, some knucklehead in New York City has a pet
Yeah.
lion that they've been
on
sort
the
of
Upper East Side of a
you're right,
two-bedroom apartment.
and sneaking the.
But so how many years were you on this movie?
So I was on it for 4 years, and the reason why I was on it for 4 years is because while I was there, another thing, it's crazy the dates and things the way lined up. The day that I started was 30 days and counting to the closing of what was called the open season. Now, I told you all about the fact that it was a very exclusive industry. Getting into the union was
Yeah.
extremely difficult. It was a classic catch-22 where, you couldn't work on a union job unless you had gotten 30 days, and the only way you could get 30 days is if you worked on the union jobs. It's crazy.
Yeah, we'll give you an option, but it's not going to work.
Yeah, it's not going to work.
So basically,
And-
the only thing you do is be on a movie.
And
that's
then there was the
current.
producers roster after that.
Yes.
You need another 30 days.
Yep.
So anyway, there was a major class action suit in 1975 into 1976 for a year, and they won the suit where all the craft locals and unions that were attached to the International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees, or the IA, had to have their doors open. So if you had worked 30 days on one movie in a certain capacity, or 90 days in a series of movies within that year, you could get in the union and get on the roster as Class A,
Yeah.
with your cards and everything. And so, although that first 30 days I didn't work as an operator, the way that Noel Marshall kept the carrot dangling in front of my face is he said, well, we'll just say you worked as an operator, because you want to get in as an operator, right? The unit, because at that point, when we came back the next year, they put me on B camera. So Jan put me on B camera. Jan had come
As an
back by
operator,
that time.
as an operator.
Yeah, and Posey started assisting him again.
And I think it's worth just pointing out that Jan de Bont got scalped, had 130 stitches or
Right.
something,
Yeah.
and then came back to the movie and shot for another couple of years.
for the most of the biggest part of the movie.
It's unbelievable.
Well, that was why he'd come over in the first
Yeah.
place. So I think he had a real honorable.
Yeah.
I mean, he really stuck it out with Noel and really saw the movie
Through a
to the
lot,
end.
but it's
Yeah.
amazing. It's
and so,
amazing.
and
It's
that's
a lot.
really to say something
Yeah,
about
about
Jan.
him.
But working for Jan was a very difficult thing. He was very
for.
tough taskmaster.
Yeah.
But by God, I learned everything I know about camera operating from that guy. He
That's
was
great.
literally one of the best operators I'd ever worked for, and a really terrific cinematographer, and also a good friend at the time. You know, we got to be really good
Yeah.
friends. But you know, it was the reason why it took 4 years. First of all, is because it was seasonal. The trees would lose the green leaves and stuff. They'd be up there spraying everything green for a while, but even that didn't work. So they'd finally have to shut down around November, and then wouldn't get back till March. And why did we have to keep on coming back? It's because of the cats. They had a script. The script was all right, but they would never do what you wanted them to do.
When you say cats, how many?
There was about 300, a
300?
little under 300. There's about 200 and something cats, lions, tigers,
Which, by the way,
black
don't exist
leopards.
on the same continent. So
No, no, no.
that,
But
that's
that was
another
part of
bit.
this goofy story that was going on.
Wait, lions, tigers,
Black leopards, cheetahs, some cheetahs,
There was a
mountain lions.
and there was a hippo, right?
No, there wasn't a hippo.
Wasn't a hippo?
No, no. But we had some cheetahs for a while, but they left.
Okay.
Not because they walked away. We found homes for them.
But
There was flamingos. There was
when you say there are 300 cats, and they had that house that they had built that was
right.
like
That was the set.
and they had what do you call it? Built it up so that it would withstand the weight of all these
Yes.
cats. And
Everything
300
was
at a time,
like
whatever.
telephone poles.
So are you like setting cameras and they're huge lions?
Well, I'll
sitting
give you an
there? You're,
example. Like
pushing past
after a
them?
while, here's the issue about working with all those cats and being around them all the time. Is after a while you just get used to being around them, and they were used to being around. They were used to you being around them.
And are they sort of like warm and cuddly some of the time? Or,
They were
I mean,
they were affectionate.
like,
Yeah.
do they do what cats do?
Well,
They rub up
first of all,
against you, or-
what the cats would do is traditionally what they would do is like the male cats would always be attracted to the female humans. This is true, and the female cats would be attracted to the male humans.
Well, you
As
say-
far as just being friends.
But I mean, in like pushing up against them like cats do
Oh
and
my
stuff.
God,
that
listen.
stuff?
So there would be times when we'd need to change the camera position, and there'd be 2, 3 cameras that we'd be working with. And you've seen a picture of the whole camera crew, right?
It's on the website. You should
Right.
check it out. They look a little beat up.
Yeah, they look a little beat up, right? And,
And
dark
actually-
circles under our eyes.
And
stuff like
Alan's
that.
in the center of it. It's
Yeah.
great.
And so, you know, it's like, oh, you know, it's not. Noel Marshall was, you know, never mind. We're not going to put all the cats in. Just take the goddamn cameras, put it on your shoulders, and walk through and get.
So
to
as
the other-
opposed to going, everybody freeze, let's clear the cats out. It's like, no, it'd be faster if we just
We walk through, right? So we take the cameras, put it on our shoulders, and we start walking our way through, and you push your way past the lion, and you push them against like that, and then they lean against you again. They push back, and you know, and they're kind of looking at you, and you walk by, and you always just kind of be careful when you go by their head, because you know they feel around, they'll sniff your leg and stuff.
yeah.
You never know, but they were actually really cool. Most of them good, and the cats did form attachments. They really did. I had this female tiger named Alexis she just kind of picked me out, right?
Wow.
And and it got so bad at one point where they would bring her out and she wouldn't even go to where we're supposed to. She'd come right over to my camera and she'd just sit down next to the camera, right?
Sweet.
She would hang out. And it was a shame because she was really one of the best performers. She would always do whatever she was asked to do over and over and over again. Unlike most cats, where once they figured out what you wanted them to do,
They didn't do it.
they wouldn't do it anymore. They
It's
would
like
do
regular
anything
cats.
but that.
Yeah, exactly.
And which is the reason why the film took so long.
Yeah.
Because they would do it once. Oh, we didn't quite get it. God damn it. Why didn't
Yeah.
you get that shot? You know, all right, well, let's try it again. And we'd work a half a day trying to get the same shot. Wouldn't work. And one of the cats would do something crazy, different. Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
All right, this is what we're going to do from now on. So the script constantly changed. It was constantly being molded and changed and added and subtracted and stuff like that.
And wait, let me just ask you a question. So she'd come over and she'd sit down next to your camera, and you were used to that. And I mean, would you like reach down and
Oh yeah, yeah, give a couple of scratches.
Give
and
a
stuff. Yeah, and then and this makes no sense at all. But I mean, remember, all right, we can't use Alexis anymore. So what they did is they had Alexis. She was delegated to being sort of the nursemaid over the young male lions. They found for some reason that a female tigress would do better as the nursemaid to all the young male lions than a lioness.
Than a lioness.
It's crazy.
Yeah,
I don't know.
whatever.
They had this thing going, and for some reason Noel was mad at me because the cat
messed
picked me
it
up.
up. Yeah.
Because I messed it up.
Yeah, like you're dating the cat or something like that. Yeah.
Cat's better than me. I didn't do anything.
So did people get bit all the time? I mean,
Not all the time, but people got bit. I got bit by a black leopard.
you get bit by a black
Yeah, I
leopard?
did. It was more like a nip because I pulled my arm.
Like enough?
Well, it is.
Yeah.
So they had all the black leopards up in this tree, and they were all hanging down like leopards do,
Oh
you
my
know, with the
God.
legs like that. And Noel says, "All right, let's move the cameras. No, let's not take all the cats off the tree. It'll take us all day to do that. Let's just move the cameras. Let's walk with the cameras, right?" So I had the Panaflex with me. I'm walking, and as I'm going underneath this limb, I reach onto the limb to get on the other side. But as soon as I put my hand there, I immediately jerked my hand away because I knew, because the cat was right there. And sure enough, it had tried to take a bite and just got a tooth right in between the two
No
bones
way.
in your right
You're lucky
there.
you pulled away. It could have been.
Because once they get possession of something, they don't let go.
Oh God.
That was it. So and the assistant who was behind me, well, he sort of said, "Watch out," just as I pulled my hand away.
Yeah.
And then Noel comes over and says, "Ah, God damn it, let's get the cat off the tree. Now the cat's no good for the next week."
Screwed it up.
Yeah, just screwed up the cat.
Thanks a lot,
Making
Alan.
and blood's coming out of my. And
The
Noel said,
show must go
now,
on. Yeah.
now that cat's no good
So,
for a week.
so then do they bring the ambulance in for you?
No, I just got a ride for somebody.
Yeah.
And at that point, Acton was this tiny little town.
Oh yeah.
And this was somewhat early in the whole process, but by the end of the movie, they had a health clinic that was almost like the size of a hospital, just because they had to deal with so many things.
Because of all the stuff coming off.
All the little things.
That's amazing.
So
Didn't you tell me once that like once you get bit by a cat, it's like months of antibiotics and
Not
whatever?
really. It can be. It
Yeah.
can be, and it was with Noel because he got his whole leg like grabbed by one of the young male lions with
Yeah.
big, huge puncture holes.
Wow.
But this one, so I got to the clinic like within 40 minutes, 30 minutes, and
Yeah.
they had irrigated. Have you ever had a wound irrigated? It is the most painful thing. They
Sounds
jam something and they just squeeze this stuff in. It was really painful.
This is I can't
And you know
even
what?
believe this.
Even after that, it still got infected.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and you also told me that years later you went to visit Tippy and that lion remembered you.
Oh yeah. So
tiger,
right.
right?
So I was dating my wife at the time, and we were going up to Joshua Tree as like a weekend getaway, and we were driving up through Soledad Canyon. I said, "Hey, you know what? Do you want to see that place where I worked on the cat?" She, "Oh God, that would be great." So we stopped at this at a rest area that had phones, because in those days you don't have cell phones. You had to use payphones. So I got on the payphone, called to be, "Oh my God, it's so great to hear from you. Oh, definitely, come on by."
That's so
do that.
sweet.
So we go in there, and sure enough, I'm driving down, and it was hilarious. As I'm driving down, of course, the parking lot's all empty now. But as I'm driving down, the barn door opens, and the guy's driving the elephant out again. It was like, oh my God, this is like deja vu.
And then
But without the ambulance.
So you look for Jan Devante.
Yeah, but without the ambulance and all the crazy shit.
Wow.
And so we're walking by the young male lion paddock, and as we're driving, say, "Oh yeah, this is they keep the young lions here. They sort of are very careful about how they separate out and keep the groups together." And as I'm explaining to her, this tiger comes bounding, and this is 10 years later, comes bounding across the thing, and it's Alexis.
That's
And
so
she
sweet.
recognized me
Really?
from 10 years later,
That's amazing.
and came right up, and she started rubbing it against. So I'm
Oh,
giving it
that's so
scratches through there, and then she turns around, tries to spray my
Well,
spray
that's
my,
a big
my-
sign of affection.
Oh yeah, like, oh, I want to own you too. Say,
That's
"Watch
great.
out."
That's great. Oh my God, I could talk to you about Roar for. At some point, this was supposed to be about operating, but
Well, we can talk about operating.
no, absolutely. But so what I was going to ask you was, so you started operating on Roar.
I did.
Sounds like.
I did. So that first fall that I went there, so I started working as a first assistant with
You were never a
Posey.
B camera assistant, a second assistant because
I never end up getting
Yeah.
to be and I barely was a first. So
Yeah.
so I was a first. The very first shot that I had to do as a first assistant,
as a first assistant, yeah.
we're on a raft. We're on the camera raft, and it's attached with a hard pipe to a canoe. And the four actors, there's Tippy, Melanie and the two sons of Noel who were playing the sons in the thing. There's
Well,
like
the
there
fact
was a
that
real
it's this whole
family,
family
the whole
in there.
family played, right? And so we're there, and I'm sitting on an apple box, and I'm loading the Panaflex, and we're doing the shot, right? And and we're completely surrounded with tigers in the water, and they're all trying to climb up on the raft.
Because they don't want to be in the water.
No, they love the water.
Oh, they do love the
No,
water?
but
Oh,
they just want to get up on the raft.
sure. Okay.
So,
Yeah.
and the animal handlers are kind of whacking them away. Get off, you know. And they're all trying to get up on. And I'm just, this is my first day, and I'm kind of figuring this out. And I've got the camera. I'm trying to hand it to Posey, and I'm trying to load. And I get this big paw. I mean, the massive paw about this big lands next to my foot. And get that thing off there. And I said, what the hell is going on here? Why are they trying to climb up on the raft? And Tippy starts laughing. She goes, because they want to know the new
The new
guy.
guy.
And I said, well, who the hell is the new guy? And they go, you are. And all these cats, they could tell I was
We
somebody
haven't
new.
explored him yet. We haven't figured
Yeah,
it
we
out
haven't
yet.
figured out him yet.
You're saying when you went to Panavision and they taught you how to load the Panaflex, there wasn't a point where they said, if you are ever on a raft and there are tigers trying to get on, that wasn't part of the.
No.
I
And I
can't
don't
even
know,
imagine
because
could
I
do
think
that.
I think some of those people knew what we were doing up there, and they didn't tell me.
I'm sure, because
They were
why would you
under-
come up, right?
No, but they weren't. They weren't. I think they were told, "Mum's the word."
Yeah, exactly. But when you started operating on that, and it was trial by fire, really.
Oh, sure. Oh,
and
God, yeah.
fire being
So
fire.
I was, I did some really sloppy work, but I got good really quickly
Yeah.
because it was survival, in the film world as well as survival and
There were video taps back then, or there were no video
no,
taps?
oh my God, no.
So
Video taps really weren't even around till, you know what? I think video taps really were developed because of Steadicam in a way. when you
somewhat,
think
yeah.
about it.
There's a lot of stuff. Follow focuses,
Yeah,
remote
follow
follow
focuses, all that stuff.
But so when you say you screw up, so you're on B camera, you do the shot, you screw it up. You're the only one who knows that you screwed it up because you're the only one seeing the eyepiece.
Absolutely.
So do you immediately go, I screwed that up?
Absolutely. I didn't get that,
You
or I
take the
got
hit?
that. Yeah, take the hit with Jan, because
Yeah.
God damn it, Jesus Christ, how can you miss a fucking shot like
Yeah,
that?
yeah.
And then he'd also say, "Oh, that's so great." So what we'd do is we would look at our dailies a couple of days later, because it would just go down to I forget the name of the lab that was doing color lab. I don't think it was called. I forget the
Yeah, there were a
movie
couple of them
movie
back then.
movie
Yeah.
lab. I think it was movie
Okay.
lab. Anyway, so we would look at the dailies the next day because they had a flatbed. They had a steam bed.
Oh, you seen it on a steam back.
And they'd have three screens,
Yeah.
and we'd see all three shots.
Oh, okay.
They'd sync them together, and we got
Oh.
to see our stuff. So it was really great.
Yeah.
So we got to look at our stuff pretty much
Do you-
right away.
do you- was it frightening to go to dailies and have everybody look at your stuff?
You have no idea how scary it was with Jan there,
Because
or Noel.
Yeah.
Noel would be the other one, but Noel is, for some crazy reason, was always a little bit more forgiving.
forgiving, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
But here's the thing: is that learning how to operate and follow cats and stuff,
well, yeah, that's what I was.
but having
wondering
it
about.
with the smoothness
Uh-huh.
of a feature,
Yeah.
it was took.
I mean, because it must have forced you to move up to a level of operating faster than most people. Because like someone who's walking around, he's going to go from that chair to that
Right.
thing because that's what he's supposed to do. But the lion's
No.
going wherever
and
the lion's
you knew what the intent of the shot was. You knew
Yeah.
what had to happen, and you had to be ready for the cat to do the right thing.
Yeah.
But if the cat did the wrong thing, it's not like an actor doing the wrong thing. Oh, I will do another take. They did the wrong thing. It might be wrong, but it could potentially be a better thing later.
Yeah.
So any wrong thing could have actually taken the script and gone into a better way.
That's
so you
really
have to
amazing.
protect that. So you always have to be ready.
Yeah.
And so your instincts and your reactions and your reflexes would be so in tune
Yeah.
that after a while, after doing this for 4 years, it got so ingrained in me
Uh-huh.
that literally, I swear to God, Dave, there was never a shot after that I felt like I couldn't do.
Well, because
I could do any shot that anybody gave me.
and it seems like anything you're doing, you're like, well, it's not a lion running at me, so
That's right. So the
this is a
danger
little
thing,
easier.
yeah. But I mean,
But-
the way that the way that you ergonomically use your body and how
Uh-huh.
you set yourself up, all the things that you do when you
Yeah.
pre-think out a shot.
But that's a huge part of operating, right? Is getting the technical down so well that you can forget the technical and just be in the moment.
That's right. So if you get all that stuff done ahead of time and prep it out, and you kind of internalize it,
Yeah.
and you can, after a while, you even get quick at doing that.
Yep.
Then you can just enjoy watching the
Just
movie.
watch the movie, right?
Yeah,
And
but
you
you know
make
it's
the
good.
movie by watching the movie.
The second year, or maybe in the beginning of the third year, it was a incredibly busy time in the industry, and so we couldn't get a Panaflex.
Okay.
So we ended up getting a PSR.
Oh,
And of course, Jan put that on me because he didn't want to use a gearhead.
Yeah,
So he
okay.
stuck it with me. So now I'm following cat
On a
stuff
geared head.
on a gearhead.
Oh, what's
But thank God I had the previous time, so I
Yeah.
had to just apply that
yeah,
a little bit better.
Now you said you started Steadicam on that movie.
Right. So then this is probably the 15th permutation of the script
Yep.
that got changed.
Mhm.
And so they wanted to do some scenes of the family before they went to Africa. So they built some. So in the middle of this lagoon house,
Yeah.
they built a rec room in their house that's supposedly in Chicago.
Yeah. Okay.
With a stairway, and it was a whole big deal.
Yeah.
And they wanted to do this big sod with going down the stairs and all that. And then they wanted to do some other stuff with the cats and stuff like that. So Jan sent me down to Panavision for almost 3 weeks
To learn how to
to
do
learn.
Steadicam.
And I learned on
Wow.
I learned on the Panaglide.
Panaglide, which was
But which is fine,
Steadicam's
yeah.
sort of or
If you could do
Panavision's
it-
version of it.
And if you
they-
could do Panaglide, you could easily do Steadicam.
because it was horrible.
Because it was horrible. It was
Yeah.
much more
So
difficult.
what year is this?
78.
So this is really early. I mean,
3 years late after the.
Yeah.
And they had just come out with the Panaglide.
and there weren't that many operators yet.
No.
Yeah,
No,
and-
there's just the initial
Yep, the
Group.
core group.
the
Yeah,
core group,
yeah.
and
That's incredible.
and I was like, sort of like, there was
You remember what it was like when they first put it on you? Were you just like, this is nuts, or
I was, but you know what's funny, because it felt right.
yeah,
It felt good. I mean, I never felt like I had to struggle with it.
that's cool. Yeah,
You know, I found my core center and balance really quickly, and so I was able to move on to the second level
Yeah.
fairly quickly.
and how long had you been operating at that point? Like when you started doing so? So
2.5
a couple
years. Yeah.
So did sort of your ideas on framing and following story and things like that, did they translate to Steadicam, and that was just like
They
a
did.
new way of doing
No, they
it?
did, and again, that a lot of that had to do with Jan and
Yeah.
overseeing what I was doing and instilling in me. All
Yeah.
right, you might be shooting something that you think is kind of like a documentary, but I want you to nail,
Yeah,
good
sure.
compositions at all times,
Oh, that's
especially when you land with
So it
something.
translated.
And so when we got to something as tame as shooting a normal scene in a quote unquote rec room in Chicago, oh, that was like home free.
That's
that was
real-
fun.
that's
Even if it
really-
was on a Steadicam.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
And so after that movie, were you basically like people knew you went out there and like, hey, I'm a Steadicam operator?
I sort of did that, but I did a little more slowly than probably I should have.
Yeah.
So, but my first big break on operating and doing Steadicam was for Robert Elswit when we did Wallace Across Texas.
Oh wow, amazing.
And like I
cinematography.
said, and Ernest Day was the director. Who Ernie?
Oh my gosh.
Ernie Day was the camera operator for Freddie Young. So Ernie had operated Lawrence of Arabia and Dr. Zhivago. So I'm working for this guy. It's like, oh my
Ernest
God.
Day, that's
I worked
incredible.
twice.
Really?
Yeah, so I worked with him on that, and worked for Robert, which is also amazing.
Yeah.
And they wanted, did a lot of Panaglide, that we had because it was a Panavision show, but a lot of Steadicam. And I think that was a big reason that they hired me, because they took a chance on me. I wasn't an A operator at that time, but that was my first big A operating job. And I did really well. I did so well that when Ernest came back to DP a show later for HBO called As Summers Die, he asked for me and had me come.
Wow, that's really
Yeah,
cool. That's
and
really
for
cool.
years after that, we always exchanged Christmas cards and stuff.
Only because I'm never going to get a chance to ask many people this. Did he give you any cool stories about Lawrence of Arabia?
He did.
Can you
did.
share one?
Yeah. So one great story is the king of Jordan.
It's just the fact that it starts with the king.
Brought them in because he wanted to he loved movies. He loved Western movies, and he wanted to bring filmmaking into Jordan. And so, and the British were really the one industry, the film industry, that really shot around the world.
Yeah.
Because at that point they had already done big movies all over the world.
Yeah.
And so, so when Lawrence of Arabia became a reality, and David Lean was going to direct that, he got to meet the king. But they brought him in, and there was one caveat about bringing the crew in, is that the fact that they don't drink alcohol, in Jordan.
Oh, okay.
That was a big thing.
And Brits like to have a beer after after a day
Forget
of
it.
work,
You won't
or
get
during a
you
day of
won't
work
get you won't
sometimes.
get the British crew to even work
Yeah,
if
yeah.
they don't get to have their bar at the
Yep.
end of the
They
day.
got to go have a pint.
And
Yeah.
and they were even willing to forego the drink at lunchtime, but you damn well better have a bar for us.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
not only that, so what they did is when they were shooting out at the Wadi Rum, they basically had a tent city. They were
Yeah.
going to have to do that anyway, so it's not like they were,
To put the crew up and
right,
and whatever. Yeah. Yeah.
because
Yeah.
Addis Ababa said, no, it's not that. I'm thinking I can't remember the name of the city,
That's all right.
but it's down by the
Yeah.
Wadi Rum.
Yeah.
Um, they built this huge tent city, and what the King of Jordan did is he had a bar tent done
Yeah.
because they were enclosed. They were an enclosed situation,
Yeah.
so it didn't get
It was
out.
self-contained.
And he had a hand carved bar 100 feet long, built, made and
For
built
the crew.
for the crew.
Wow. I wonder where that landed up.
Well, it landed in three pieces.
Oh, yeah?
So one third of it is, I think, it's still like in a museum or something in Jordan.
Oh, that's cool.
One third went back to England,
Yeah.
and it may have been at the studio there, the
Okay.
Shepperton studio
Yeah.
for a while. I don't know. Somebody told me that they.
Oh, that's great.
But this is a story from Ernie.
Yeah.
And then years later, I'm now shooting um, Heroes Reborn, and
Which is a TV show.
it was like a miniseries.
A miniseries
It was
based
a
on the
limited
original
series.
TV show. Yeah.
On the original series.
Heroes. Yeah.
And so they wanted to they wanted to shoot a Jordan unit.
Okay.
So they sent me to shoot and direct this Jordan unit.
Oh, how
And we
cool.
took four of the actors with us, and I got a Steadicam operator from Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And so we all went there. And so when I'm scouting locations, we're in the Wadi Rum.
Oh, how
And I'm
cool.
saying, oh my God,
This is, yeah.
I'm finding these locations that they used in Lawrence of Arabia, but I'm also directing, so I'm getting to direct to the same place
Oh,
that
that's
David
so cool.
Lean
Yeah,
directed,
that's
right?
really neat.
So it was really great. And this old guy who was he was an old Bedouin who was also the location
Manager.
manager. It wasn't
scout.
location, he was a scout.
Yeah.
And he really was probably in his late 70s.
Yeah.
And he was showing us all the different places. And he was just such a fascinating guy. So I got to talking with him, and he told me, yeah, I worked on Lawrence of Arabia when I
Yeah.
was 17 years old.
Yeah.
He was telling me about it. And he told me and he told me the exact same story that Ernie did about the bar.
Wow, that's so cool.
So it was like,
Uh,
oh my God, it was like a full circle.
Yeah, oh, that's really cool.
Yeah.
God, that's
It
great.
was a great full circle.
But this is like the great thing about working in the film industry, these crazy stories that like just, they're
Right?
fantastic,
I
right?
know,
I
absolutely.
could listen to them all day. But so I want to jump ahead a little bit.
Okay.
We're going to jump over a lot of stuff. But at some point, you obviously became a cinematographer. You had an you have an incredible career in the things you've shot. You did 6 Feet Under, which
I did.
was just a phenomenal show on so many levels and beautiful. And we were actually just talking today about a shot that you did in it that has deep
Right.
focus.
Yeah, which I
right?
if you
Yeah.
wanna talk
But
about that.
so Greg Smith, I think
Greg Smith was my
A-steady?
A steady
Yeah.
for the pilot, and he wasn't interested in going on to the series.
Yeah.
So Fred Iannone ended up being
Oh,
my.
gosh, Fred,
Do you know Fred?
Yeah, I know Fred. Sure.
Do you really?
Yeah. I mean, not well, but we've
But
worked,
yeah,
in the
yeah.
past.
So
we were- yeah.
so Freddie was my A operator, and Jeff Haley was my
Jeff Haley was your B operator.
B operator Steadicam.
Steadicam. Oh my gosh, that's
Jeff Haley, I
didn't
worked
know
with 8 years before that. Jeff Haley was the video guy on this show called Op Center.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah, it's like-
Jeff Haley's good. I've had him on the podcast. He's an amazing operator.
Right,
So many-
right, and he's like Mr.
He's also like brilliant on a level of like,
Brilliant.
I mean, he went
He's
to
at
Stanford
He
for
was
some.
Stanford?
He actually told me what he went to Stanford to study, and I didn't understand what he
Yeah,
was
it was some
talking
crazy
about.
thing.
Yeah. Anyway, that's another thing. So when you're a DP and you're looking at operators and what are you looking for in an operator? Like when you interview them, when you look at the reel, when you look at their work.
Well, the first thing I'm looking for is somebody who is definitely a storyteller.
Okay.
They have to know how to tell a story. They have to know how to look for the story.
Yeah.
So when they're on the camera, they need to know what story is being told at that time in that one moment for that one shot,
Okay.
and how it fits into the grander story.
Yeah.
Because they're only going to help me, and they're going to help the director by doing that.
Yeah.
Also, the less I have to think about figuring out the logistics of the shot, the more I give that to the operator. I'm very much like the British system.
I was just
I
going to
love
ask
the
you that.
British
So for
system.
anybody who doesn't know, the British system, which I'm into that too, is The operator and the director sort of, with the DP a little bit, obviously, figure out the shot, and the director of photography does more of the lighting and not the logistics.
Right.
Yeah.
Because most of my operating experience, to be honest with you, in the 80s was with British cameramen who
Yeah.
had come over.
So
So I
you're
worked
used
for
to it.
Ernest
Makes
and,
sense. I think it's a better way to work, but it's
Peter McDonald I worked with, like
and that said, for anybody who doesn't know,
Chris
it's not
Mankiewicz.
that the DP is kept out. They're very much involved.
Yes.
It's just that they expect the
Right.
operator
So it's
to
just
step
the
in. Yeah.
operating cameraman and then the lighting cameraman.
So when you say a storyteller, when you're looking at an operator's reel, you're talking to other people about them, whatever. How do you determine whether they're a good
Well,
storyteller?
you can't really determine anything by an operator's reel
Yeah, that's true.
because that doesn't mean
Yeah.
anything. Uh, you know, I really, it's funny because I don't take anything off of a resume either. It's really meeting somebody.
Yeah,
And
because
if I
just
just
all the
like,
movies I got fired
if I
from on
just
my
like,
resume.
if I just like
Yeah.
somebody just because I like the feel about them and how they are, I hire a lot on just that.
Just personality.
And very rarely have I ever been disappointed.
Yeah.
You
Okay.
know, obviously they have a level of experience, you know, they
Sure.
meet a certain criteria in the resume, but it doesn't have to be knockout stuff. And a
Yeah.
lot of times I've hired people who are knockout stuff and they're kind of like a pain in the neck, you know.
So Jeff Haley. The
Jeff
first time you hired Jeff Haley, he obviously didn't have.
He
I mean, he's
he
not
was
Jeff Haley
already
today.
no, but he was already at that point again. And I also knew him from the op center
Okay.
where he was just the video guy.
But again, so you obviously saw something in him and you liked him.
Oh, yeah.
I want to bring you. I
Well,
want to
because
bring
Jeff's
us along for the ride.
he's intelligent.
Yeah.
He knew how to
Yeah.
to break down
Yeah.
story elements.
Yeah.
And why he didn't start directing more, I don't get it because he directed two movies. Two
He's in
little
the
indies.
process actually.
Oh, is he
He's
good?
got some
And he
things
should.
coming
And
up.
I'm
Yeah.
surprised
Yeah.
he
No,
waited this long.
I think he's a very strategic individual.
Yes. Oh no, he's got
smart.
everything planned
Yeah.
out.
But so let me ask you the reverse of this, and you don't have to give me any names. If you think of an operator who you hired, who you went, I will never work with this person again.
Yeah.
You don't have to give specifics, but what is it? What does an operator do that's bad?
Lack of imagination.
Lack of. Okay, tell me about
Having
that.
no imagination. In other words, doing things always safe, always down the middle, always kind of boring, always kind of
Okay.
not reactive to, not able to adjust or adapt. You know, oh my God, how could you miss that? Even though it wasn't the actor didn't hit the mark, but still, how could you miss something like that?
Yeah.
Where it was just all you have to do is just know what the story, know what
Yeah.
the intent of the scene was.
Yeah.
You know, okay, maybe I said keep the lampshade in the corner of the frame, but are you going to miss the action because you went to get the lampshade?
So
in the
again, it
frame?
comes back to understanding the story and telling
Yeah,
the story,
it's
right?
always
The
about
story's there, the lampshade's there. It's not a story about the lampshade. It's a story about the
It'd be
story.
nice,
Yeah.
but only if the actor hits the mark
Yep.
and it all kind of organically falls into that.
So
position.
so what do you think is in someone's personality that allows them to do that?
Uh, they've got life experience.
Yeah. Okay. Right.
There's life experience there. They've gone down a road
Yeah.
that's interesting.
Yeah.
And that they understand the world and they understand how things are. And I don't know. It's just an instinctive thing.
Yeah. But
So there's a lot of that.
so you call someone and you interview them, and this is what you're really looking for is like, do
Right.
you have the
But
sauce?
it's always better if I can meet them in person.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah,
Yeah.
you sit and talk with them.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
on that note, and because we're in front of a lot of students here, people who are starting out who don't have a body of work, they don't have some IMDb you can look at, they don't have a reel. How do they go in and impress someone?
By the sheer energy and their enthusiasm and their imagination.
Yeah.
Those are the things that really go. So, like I always tell the students, I said, you know, there's only two things that they're looking for when you leave film school, and neither one of those is GPA. They could care less, unless you were going to law school and you're going to work at the front office as a
Yeah. Different deal.
an
Yeah.
accountant
Yeah.
or something
Yeah.
like that. That's completely separate. But if you're going to be in production, all they're looking for is your body of work
Yeah.
and your enthusiasm.
Yeah. And you're at it.
How much
Yeah.
they love having you around.
Yeah.
How much they love your company. How much they couldn't imagine having the set without you there.
I will tell you something, and I'm not this person if she hears this, and it's not that she was not a great loader, but there was one time where we needed a loader, and I was like, "Who was the woman who made the cookies?" And they were like, "Oh, it's so and so." I was
Right.
like, "She was fantastic, but the cookies were fantastic."
Yeah, right,
and
right, right.
She wasn't bribing us; she was a baker, so
No,
she'd
no.
bring stuff in, and it's like I remembered
was a
her because of the
legitimate
cookies.
sharing.
And she was a great
She
lover.
was happy to share.
No,
something.
and she was just fun to have around,
Right.
and whatever. So it is stuff like that,
Yeah,
not it? Yeah,
exactly. But going back to 6 Feet Under and why that all occurred the way it
yeah.
was, is there was a process, and I didn't realize that there were some things ingrained in what I like that were deeply rooted. So when you
What
ask
you
me,
like in operators, you're saying, or what you
know what I
like in
liked in imagery,
visually and imagery? Yeah,
visually.
yeah, yeah.
So, and I'm sorry to stray back to that,
No,
but I
no,
did. This
it's
is
all
one thing I
good.
wanted to answer.
Yeah.
So, I remember one of the first film courses, other than that production one that I told you about at Mass Art. I took a film history class.
Yeah,
And of course, I watched all the classic movies. And one of them was Citizen Kane.
yeah,
And it's always sort of kind of a mandatory thing.
sure.
But what struck me about Citizen Kane is the way that it was shot, the deep focus, because I love deep focus. That's my whole
Cool.
thing.
Yeah.
And most of the students who've worked with me, there's Caso talking about the deep
Eh,
focus thing again.
here he goes again.
Here he goes
Yeah.
again. But for me, it's great storytelling because you're letting things happen on you're not relying on cutting all the time.
No, yeah.
So I started working. I've worked as an operator for. I've worked on 52 pickup that John Frankenheimer directed.
Oh, wow.
And I was the operator, Steadicam operator on that.
That's a big name right there.
And then years later, when I started shooting and all that, and I found myself going into an interview with him. Right? He said, and he remembered me, and it's a good to see you again, all that.
Yeah.
And he said, so we started talking, and he said, so you've read the script? I said, yeah, it's great. And he said, and we never had these kind of conversations while working before because I was the operator.
Mhm.
So he said, so what kind of movie? What movie do you think you would pull out as being sort of a template? And I said, well, I think there was a lot of this needs to be told in juxtaposition and just composition. And I'm thinking, like an Orson Welles approach, and to the like the Citizen Kane. And he said, "Oh God, you're going to be hired." He said, "I'm kind of kidding, but let's talk
Yeah.
about that for a second."
Yeah.
And so we got into it, and so what I did on George Wallace, it was all about defocus. We never used a lens longer than a 24.
Really? Wow.
So any lens longer than
Close and wide.
it wasn't on the
Yeah.
it wasn't on the camera truck.
Yeah.
And all our masters were shot with an 18,
Wow.
21, sometimes
Yeah.
close-ups, all 24. And I was shooting like night exteriors at 8.5.
And a stop of 8.5.
Stop at 8.5 to carry that focus.
Wow.
And
That's
and
a lot of light.
if you look at and we did it the honest way. So I didn't use diopters.
Split diopters.
Didn't use any of that. We just did it the old-fashioned way. And he loved it. So that's why he hired me to
That's
come on.
great.
To
I've never seen that, and I'm gonna. Is it streaming somewhere?
I think you can get it.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna link to it in the
It's a
podcast.
it's a really
page on the
terrific.
website.
It's great.
No, I'd like to see
I
that.
mean,
Sounds
John
fantastic.
won an Emmy, and
great.
Gary won an Emmy.
Oh, that's really
Yeah,
cool.
It was a great show.
When you have a B camera operator and an A camera operator, can you tell me what you expect from each of them and what's different?
Yeah. So the A operator sort of holds the fort.
Okay.
I kind of think of it
Yeah.
that way. Yeah. We have the design shot.
Mm-hmm.
And they kind of hold the fort. They get what's necessary in the design of the scene and how we've thought it out.
Yep.
And there's certain B camera shots that are also designed, but there's also those B camera shots where we'll go find something.
Yeah.
And also even in the design shots. So what I always expect from B operators is to find something, to do something, to they talk about understanding story and being storytellers.
Yeah.
B camera operators almost have to be more of a storyteller than the A
In
operator.
a weird way,
does.
right?
In a
And
weird
also,
way.
I think they have to know, well, not, they don't have to know more, but they have to be more cognizant of the edit, right? They're finding those pieces that the edit.
Absolutely. And again, being a storyteller means you have to understand editing,
Yeah.
which again, being a camera person, being a cinematographer, you
100%.
understand editing.
Yep.
So you can't help your director if you don't understand editing, and you can't help yourself. So as a cinematographer, if you don't understand editing, you can't help yourself, because if you're out shooting and you've paced out what you need in a day, okay, and you want to get this in the afternoon because you want to be backlit, and that's where you follow the sun
Yep,
and all that.
yep.
And you run out of time, and you're scrambling, and now you have to start cutting stuff and dropping stuff. If you know editing, you know exactly what you can drop and also what you need to get, not only for the director to tell a story, but also what you need to get to have the pictures that you
Yeah.
want.
Yeah.
And you can't do it unless you understand editing.
Amazing.
And
Yeah.
how many, and operators have to understand editing too. See how many operators and DPs that I kind of worked with who don't understand editing and paint themselves into a corner
Yep.
and can't get themselves out of a scene, and they can't help anybody.
Yeah.
And the director's pulling up their hair because why did you end up shooting this scene? I mean, the shot, we don't really need that shot. I need this to get it. And the DP was getting that shot because that he was thinking about that's the shot he wanted to light.
Yep.
And it
Yep.
had nothing to do with what they actually needed.
I've
How
been
many
there.
times have you been there?
I've watched it happen, and I'm thinking in the back of my mind, we are so in trouble. But
Yeah.
sometimes you can't stop the
No,
train.
you can't
try.
stop it, right?
So if I'm a B camera operator and you've told me like go find stuff,
Right.
I'm watching. I'm watching the rehearsal, right?
Right.
And I think I have something. Do I go, Alan? There's a really good shot over here. I mean, do
No.
I come quietly and ask you, are you
Right.
okay with this?
Yes.
What do I?
Well, first of all,
how do I pitch it?
if I've told you to look for shots,
That's true.
I'm giving you a license.
So let's say you haven't. Let's say
But-
we're just looking at the scene and you haven't
But even
given
with the
me.
license,
Yeah.
there's still a protocol.
Yeah.
But if I haven't given you a license, then there's definitely a protocol.
So talk to me about.
So the protocol is very much this. So if you're the B operator, I would think you probably want to talk to the A operator first, because I leave a lot of of responsibility with the A operator.
Again, English system, they
Because
know
if they understand what the shot is, I don't want to be having to look over their shoulder. I want to do my lighting and
Yep.
get going and leave it to them to work out the kinks.
Okay.
Because I want them to also come to me and say, you know what, we were talking about doing this. This ain't going to work. The physics ain't going to work.
Yeah.
Really? It's really not going to work? No. So we get the director over. We may even sometimes get the actors back.
Well,
if
we
it
got
find
to
out-
block this a
Yeah,
little bit or
but
something. Yeah.
Having said that, if the B operator goes to the A operator and says, I got this idea, but it's this and this, and what do you think is going to work? Is it going to work? And I'm coming to you first because I don't want to, get in the way of your shot or what you're trying to do. And the A operator, and I really demand a good relationship between A and B. And I don't like A operators who are really, really territorial.
I don't want you stealing my thunder, right?
Yeah, it's like, come on, guys,
Yeah.
let's quit that, because you know what? At the
Yep.
end of the day, there's no A shot, there's no B shot. They're all A shot.
Yep. Exactly.
Whatever ends up in the final cut is an A camera
It
shot,
tells the story. It's an Asian.
right?
Yep.
So, boom. So I want them to already have a really positive relationship, and if they do, then there won't be an ego, and the
Yeah.
A,
No, no,
say, you know
absolutely.
what? That's a great idea.
Yep, yep.
And most of the time, a good A operator is going to let the B operator come and sell his own story.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, and
Absolutely.
sometimes he says, you know what? Let me handle this one because I really like your idea and I'm going to get it done.
there's some
I
politics,
better
Yeah.
deal with this one. So it's great. But
Yeah.
so then they would come to me.
Yep.
I would want them to come to me.
Yep.
And then I'll say, you go ahead, you sell it. Or you know what? I better sell this one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Politics.
Because again,
It's not because I
what it is.
wanted them to think it was my idea.
Oh, absolutely.
Because I'll always say, hey, you know what? Joe on B camera,
Yep.
he came up with this great idea. What do you think of
Yeah.
it? I'll always give credit to everybody.
I've done 2 shows almost in a row as A camera, and the B camera operator has been Gary Malouf, who's the camera operator on the Bear, and Gary is not a B. I mean, I shouldn't say that. He's an A camera operator,
Right.
But he was kind enough to come in because he
But
wanted
he was
to work.
having a ball, I bet.
He was having an absolute ball. But the good thing I wanted to say was he would come over and he'd go, I got a great opportunity over here, but the only thing is I'm going to need to come over that piece of the track over there. And and we had enough of the thing. And I go, what do you, well, it's this. And I go, oh, that's great. And he goes, do you think that if you were able to turn your chassis around, I could lose that piece of chassis?
Yeah.
You could still get what you want. And because we were so cool together,
Yeah.
it was like, Gary, that's a great shot. Of course. And I can still, by the way, get mine. Or sometimes he'd go, I can get this, but it's going to really screw you at this end. And I don't want to do that to you. And then he'd leave it in my lap and I'd
Yeah.
go, it's worth it or it's not.
Yeah.
But it basically
Sometimes
was,
you'll say, you know what, I
Yeah.
don't need that part of the show.
no, and then
Or
sometimes
you
I'd
say,
go, you know what, Gary, I'm taking my track away and going to the truck. We're going to do your shot because it's so much better than mine. But I mean, he's a full-on storyteller, and that's why the Bear is so. I mean, among
And
other
that's why when you have a really tight crew
Yeah.
where everybody works
It's
together,
not about ego. It's just
it's
about.
not about ego.
better.
It's who's the best idea.
Yeah, I don't. Do you
It's
ever
always
work with
about
Tommy
perfect.
Shalami? Do you know Tommy Shalami?
No, but I told you I've worked with his wife.
That's right, Christine
Yeah,
Latty. But
and I remember she told me that she was going to go work on this thing, and Alan Caso was the the DP, and he goes, "Oh, you're in great hands."
Oh, that's
Which
cool.
is a very
That's
nice
high
compliment
praise
from him.
But I
you
did
know?
West Wing when ER Live, and I've been working with
Yeah.
Tommy forever. Tommy's the kind of guy who will absolutely know the shot's this, and they bring here, and they come here, and they come here, and they come here, and the craft service guy will walk over and go, "You know, it'd be better from over there," and he'd go, "Oh my God, it's so much better." You know, I mean, he doesn't care where
Well,
the
that
idea
actually
comes from.
happened to me with the craft service guy.
Seriously?
Yeah. So I'm on.
Same
I
craft
think it
service?
was 6 feet under.
Yeah.
We were like into our 15th hour, and
Oh
we were
God.
really getting killed.
Oh no.
And I literally painted myself into a corner, and I never do that. I'm always really good
Yeah.
at minimalizing stuff like that. But this was just one of those times where I got caught myself,
Yeah.
right? And I couldn't figure out what the heck was going on and why this wasn't working. And then at that point, the craft service guy came in and was like bringing sandwiches to the
Oh
set,
yeah.
right?
Okay.
Yeah. And he goes, hey, Alan, it's weird. I thought we were going to finish with a night scene. And it was a night scene, but it's so overlit it that it looked like a day scene. And I said, "Oh my God, you're right, Louis. This is crazy." So
That's
I said,
awesome.
just making it. First of all, I want to, thank
Sandwiches
Louis.
are here, Louis.
And I want to thank him for making.
Oh, that's
And
great.
so we turned a couple of lights off, and,
Yeah.
and then we were ready to
Well,
go.
oh, that's really funny. But
Yeah,
that's
so
what
it
happens
really
in the
was.
15th hours. You like do lose
Oh.
track of it. It's kind of amazing. As an operator, back to when you were an operator, did you ever show up and you were with a dolly gripper, you were with an assistant who wasn't as good as you needed them to be?
Yeah.
And if so, how do you make that? What do you do? How do you make that work? How do you bring someone up who, is not quite there?
Well, first of all, you have to, usually it's a shot. You realize, oh my God, I'm in trouble now because they
Yeah.
can't. So you have to do a quick repair job. So you just have to take a lot of that on yourself.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things you can do with operating to minimize the
Sure.
screw ups, or the
Yep.
inability to do a boom.
So basically, they've pitched the shot, and you're like, this dolly gripper, this assistant can't do that.
Right.
So then it's like, maybe we'll be on a little wider lens. Maybe
Yeah.
we'll be a little farther.
to deal with it.
So,
And
yeah.
then you got to sit them down and say, guys, this is what I need from you.
Yeah.
Do you think you can get there? And I've only fired like 2 people in my
It's the
entire
worst thing
life.
in the world. But sometimes it has to happen.
Yeah, it has to
It's
happen.
just- it's
But
just
only
the
in
way
my
it is.
entire life, only fired 2 people, and I'll stick with people to the end of a show, and then I may not hire them
Yeah,
again.
yeah.
But
But do you find that usually you can help bring people
Yes.
up? Maybe not as far as you'd like to,
no,
but
but
better. than-
certainly in the way that I've always done it is by bringing out the points that what they did that was so good,
That's what I was
and
wondering.
also lead by example,
Yeah.
and show them that not to get down on them,
Yep.
but also to positively critique and not criticize. So
Oh,
critique
that's
and not criticize. So you give them a place to go.
Yeah.
So you give them a suggestion.
Here's
Now,
how this could
yeah,
be better.
This is
great.
what I
This was great.
This is
but
what I
could be better.
kind of did when I was in this situation.
Yeah.
And yeah, so there's ways that you build people up
Yeah.
and make them feel better about themselves,
Uh-huh.
and they'll perform a lot better.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. And on the flip side, I've been on shows where the other camera operator, what usually the B camera operator, was maybe stuck with a dolly grip who wasn't as good at
Which
what.
happens a lot.
And they weren't, because usually the B dolly is kind of like learning and moving up,
Right.
and you have to realize that. And I've had them, and I enjoy working with them because you help move people up.
Right.
But and let's just say these operators didn't have the best of personality.
Right.
And there was
not
a lot
very
of like dressing down, and it just, I could just see it falling off the cliff. And I went
You're
over.
never going to get any
There's
better.
one time
and
I
they're
went
probably
over and
getting
I was
worse.
like, dude, you may even be right, but this is not going to get better this way. I can see what's happening. He's shutting down. It's
Yeah,
not good.
shutting down.
So again, it's like, hey, that was great. And what I've done actually with assistants before who I know are struggling, I'll go, you know what? I need to see this by the beats, and so we're going to start here. And I'll go, how's the focus? Yeah, I got it. And you sort of like
walk them through what
and
they
you,
need
you
to.
take the hit. It's like,
Yeah.
I need to see this, but hey, but while we're doing this, make sure you got all your marks or whatever, and it like gives them the
Yeah.
So it's like all those
And
things
here's
to
the other
think
thing
about.
that I always insisted for my operators.
Yeah.
And for a long period, when it went from only the operator saw
Mhm.
the shot to now people can follow
Everybody's
focus
watching.
much
Yeah,
more.
yeah.
But also assistants of their own follow focus.
Yeah, yeah.
Before that came,
Yeah.
but after reflex, where you have a camera and you're actually looking through the lens that you're shooting,
Yeah.
between that time and before focus monitors,
Yeah.
it was only the operator
Who
who
knew?
saw the shot, who saw it focus. And I would say probably 2 out of 5 operators always tried to do this and say, well, it's the assistant's job.
To brush it off.
And they
yeah.
never lasted long with me.
No.
I said, You're the
Sometimes
one
you
who's
gotta,
watching,
yeah,
and I'm expecting you to be responsible for the focus.
that's
So
exactly
if
right.
they didn't see it, if they missed it, and you missed it
Yep.
or didn't care about it,
Yep.
then I'm going to blame you, not them.
And then there are other times, by the way, and I've done this, and I'm sure you did this, where you do a shot and Dolly messes up or the assistant messes up, and they know that they're going to get thrown under the bus. And you cut, I need another one. What's the problem? I screwed up. What's the problem? I screwed up. I need to go again.
Yeah.
Let's please just go again.
Yeah, yeah.
And then the worst thing is the director's like, no, I need to know what was wrong. And you're like, I hiccuped in the middle. I didn't see it. And it's just like,
Yeah.
then you go over, you're like, will you shut up? I'm trying to do something. But sometimes when you do that,
Right.
then the assistant or whatever is like, oh, they have my back.
Yeah,
And we're all a team.
they stood up for
Yeah,
me.
it's
They
a
stood
big,
up for me, and
it's a
then
big
you
deal.
get like 200%, and suddenly people get better
Yeah, yeah,
because sometimes people just lose focus because
Yeah.
they're not lazy, but they're just not focused.
yeah, yeah. I wanted to ask you about this because you mentioned this a while ago, and again, not a lot of people I'm going to get to ask about this. You worked with Faye Dunaway,
Oh, I did.
and you were going to tell me a story about
Faye
Faye
Dunaway.
Dunaway.
So I get this show called Running Mates, and I have four divas. I have
Or divas? Oh,
divas.
I see. Okay, yeah.
Real divas. I can't remember. Nancy Travis, Faye Dunaway, Laura Linney, who's Laura is no diva at all.
No, she is not,
No,
and she's the
but
most wonderful woman in the world,
the
the most
most,
incredible actress. I did Ozark with her,
yeah.
and I like
And
to be
I
perfectly
wanted to
honest.
bring her up about you.
But I took Ozark because I was like I didn't know the show, and I Googled and I IMDb'd it, and
And
I
you
was
saw
like,
Laura Linney's
I get
name.
to work with Laura Linney.
Yeah, right, exactly. And she's
brilliant.
royalty.
And she also, by the way, she directed for the first time on the show
great.
and blew it out of the
Yeah,
water
I'm sure
because
she
she's so smart. But anyway, yeah.
No, she's royalty. So, but Faye Dunaway is like,
And known a little bit for I need to be
oh
lit a
no,
certain way and I
no,
want to look a certain
she's the
way.
person who strikes terror in any cinematographer. It's like if a cinematographer finds out that they're going to be working with
Faye Dunaway.
Faye Dunaway, they say, oh, I don't think I'm going to take that job.
That's
Okay,
a
because
tough
she's infamous for beating up cinematographers. She has a love, not even a love hate, just a dislike hate relationship with
Yep.
cinematographers. And every cinematographer has always had bad experiences with her. And I always thought, God, if I'm going to be a DP, and this is before I even became a DP, one person I'm never going to work with is Faye Dunaway because I heard these
Yeah.
stories
No,
forever,
absolutely.
right? And so I get hired on the show, and they're still casting, and I find out that Faye Dunaway has been casted. I
So
said, "Oh my
you've taken the
God.
show and then
Yeah.
it's like and Faye
Oh my
Dunaway.
God.
Well, it was a good career,
How
right?
could this happen to me?"
And this is at what point in your career? Like how
This is just before 6 Feet Under, but after working with Frankenheimer.
Okay.
So I've had some chops, and
Yeah,
I know how to. I've
Yeah.
got a thick skin at this
Sure.
point, right?
Yeah.
So I started analyzing. Okay, what is the thing that Faye Dunaway demands that cinematographers always hate? And it's of course she wants to be lit, just all this soft light from the front. Okay, so what are ways to make that look really great?
Yeah.
And I started thinking about all the different ways, and I started come up with a whole bunch of different lighting scenarios that I could do in a lot of different things. Like if I want something moody, all right, well, it's just going to be very little fill light, and it'll be a lot of backlight, or
Yeah.
something like that. They can always make it look good. So I felt pretty confident that I had a plan. So then somebody had the great idea. That was the director. We're going to do some screen tests on all the actresses. I want to see how they look. Okay. And so we work out this day. I think we're at the stages at Panavision. And so we're going to do the screen test, right? And so they're all there. So all the first three women come in, meet them for the first time. Laura Linney, who I've always wanted to meet. She was a huge help during the whole show.
Oh, I'm sure.
She just told me all the stuff that was going on and helped.
Yeah.
So I had a great thing.
No
So
question.
then it got time.
Also, by the way, you cannot light Laura Linney poorly.
No,
She is gorgeous.
You couldn't screw that up.
No.
Right. So even if you tried.
Yeah.
So then it gets to Faye, and I make a few changes.
Yeah.
And I have like literally a wall of light around behind the camera,
Mhm.
all super soft. You couldn't buy a shadow.
Yeah.
Okay. You just couldn't buy a shadow. And I had some backlight that was stuck way
And just out of curiosity, when she came in and first met you as a cinematographer, was it?
Well, I'm going to tell you what happened.
Yeah.
So, so let's get ready for Faye now.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Faye, she's still in the room. Okay. Is Faye coming out yet? No, she hasn't come out yet. So now it's 20 minutes later. The other actresses are gone. Oh, she's opening the door. She's coming out now. So now there's like all these PAs stationed down the hallway and in the doorway and all that. She's made the turn. She's coming down the last hallway now. So it's like that. And she's got to the door. The door was open. She's coming in now.
And it's like
Right.
sweat coming down your head.
Oh my God. I'm like, oh, fuck. So it couldn't be worse, right? And she comes in like, like that. And she goes, all right, where is the, and she looks at the lighting setup. And I'm standing and she goes, are you the cinematographer? Are you Alan? Because she had already found out who this guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
Oh, I'm sure she'd done her homework.
I'm so glad to meet you. And she came up because she saw the lighting setup.
So great.
So glad to meet you. And we got along famously.
That is fantastic.
Too famously, because guess what? For 6 months after we finished that show, she would call me up like on a Sunday or something. She was trying to get together some documentary movie about news reporters in the early 70s. So she'd call up and say, what kind of camera did they use? Oh, Alan, would you help me like
Oh, that's so amazing.
Finally, my wife, she called up all hours, says, it's Faye again.
Faye again.
Yeah,
It's Faye Dunaway for
So
you.
finally, I remember she called up because she was in New York and didn't think of it. She calls up at 6:30 on a Sunday morning.
Oh, jeez.
And my Faye gets up the phone. She goes, this is the last time.
Why is Faye Dunaway bothering you?
Right?
That's
So I
fantastic.
did, hi, Faye. How's it going? She goes, I just want to let you know that we got the show off the ground and just want to thank you for everything you've done to help me on that. And that was the last time.
That was the last call. What a great
That
story.
was Faye
That's
Dunaway.
really, really cool.
I had a great time with
That's
her. Honest to God, I
fantastic.
really did. She was a lot of fun.
And a credit to you,
And-
by the way, for saying what hurdles do I have? I'm
Yeah.
going to embrace them
she
and make
looked
something out of
great
it.
on that show.
Yeah.
She looked great. She drove the producers like nuts.
She's notorious.
Yeah,
but
notorious.
That's fantastic.
She was a great.
Thank you for sharing that. That's a
Yeah,
great
it was
story.
fun. Yeah.
Well, I could keep on talking to you for 5 hours, but at some point the podcast has to be over. I'm gonna first of all, thank you very much to the folks at SCAD. Did you guys enjoy listening to this? This is fantastic, and actually part of being here that's been great is just talking to you about all that
Yeah,
and
vice
all the
versa.
things. But so since these students are here and since they'll be listening to this podcast, the question that I leave everybody with is advice on how to succeed in this business, advice to your students on how to succeed in business, advice to Alan Caso at 20 something on how to succeed in the business,
Right.
what you have learned on how do you do
Again, I'm going to go back to what I said. You need to be the positive energy on the set. You need to be the person who everybody wants to have around, who does their job really well, who shows up early, leaves later. Especially if you're in a starting position. Happy to get people coffee, happy to do this, happy to do all that different stuff. But you're happy and you're inquisitive and you're asking questions all the time, and you're asking why this and why that, without being a pain in the neck, but certainly asking enough questions so that people see that you're interested, see that you want to learn, see that you want to be a contributing factor in the process. So I think that's the big thing about what I would give people advice for. And also do your homework, do research. In other words, if you want to do a certain thing in the industry, find out all you can about what that is and talk to people. Talk to everybody you can. Talk to people who do that job, and get a plan. Get a plan for like where you want to be in 2 years, where you want to be in 5 years. And you may not get to those places, but you may have gone to another place, which is even better. Life itself finds its own road. But I think those are the things that you really need to do when you're starting off, is to be a real positive influence, be a happy person. Because, the sets, as you know, are long, and the energy level requires so much input to keep yourself going, 12, 14 hours, that being positive really helps being that way.
I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. We'll be back soon with another great episode. Don't forget to check us out on theop.io for all sorts of information on operating and storytelling. So thanks for listening and have a great day.